We've got a number of different items here that were used by the British Royal Navy for the issuing of rum to the sailors. And of course, the Royal Navy has got a great tradition of rum. And it first started in 1655 when Vice Admiral William Penn found himself with his ship in the West Indies, and the beer that they had on board to drink had fouled. So he used the local rum. This went down particularly well, and it soon spread in use to the rest of the Navy. And of course, rum, much longer shelf life than beer, so far more practical. Well, by 1740, Vice Admiral Vernon decided that really the rum should be watered down, and it became known as grog. Well, where did this nickname for it come from? Watered down rum? Well, Vice Admiral Vernon was particularly fond of a waterproof coat that he used to wear, which was made out of grogram material. His nickname was Old Grogram. Old Grogram, grog. So let's have a look at some of the different items that we've got here. Well, the first and the biggest is what is called a barraco or a breaker. And this would be used for moving the neat rum from the locked spirit room on board ship to the deck where it would be mixed with water. This had to be very transparent. It had to be done in front of the sailors so that they could see that the accuracy of mixing the rum with water was true and nobody was being shortchanged. Now, not many of these in their original state has survived. When the issuing of rum stopped in 1970, a number of these were sold off to companies and they turned them into stick stands. So what they would do was remove a bung and fill it and put a coat of arms transfer on top, remove the handles and take out one end, stand it on its end, and then you've got a stick stand. Now, if you see a stick stand, how can you tell that it used to be a barraco? Well, if you look carefully at the transfer, you might see the infilled hole, and if you turn it upside down and look at the underside, you might see the holes from the screws for the handle. So that's a barraco, which was used for moving neat rum from the locked spirits room to the deck. Once on board deck, you would take the rum out of the barraco using a rum pump. And you might pump it into a lipped measure. Well, we've got two different types of measures here. We've got lipped measures and a round measure or grog measure. So firstly onto the lip measure. They were considered far more accurate than a round measure. They were issued like the round measures in 8 different sizes, ranging from 1 gallon down to half a gill. And originally, when used, they would have had a lead seal to the inside of the lip, which would have been a customs and excise seal, which was just certifying the volume of the contents. And of course, over the years, when they lost their accuracy, perhaps the copper had got too many dents or knocks, the seal would be broken off if they were found not to be as accurate. The round measure would then be used for issuing the mixed rum and water, the grog, to the head of each different mess. A mess on board ship was a group of sailors, and they would eat and drink together. And again, the round measures would be in 8 different sizes. 1 gallon, which is the hardest to find size, not easy to find at all, and down to half a gill with sizes in between. Now, you see an awful lot of copper jugs on the market, How do you know if it's one which was used by the Royal Navy and it's a true lip measure, or it's just an ale measure from a pub, say, or for something else? Well, there's different things you can look for. The first and the most obvious is a broad arrow mark. But not all of them had broad arrow marks. They stopped putting the mark on in the early 20th century. Other things you could look for are the shape. It's very particular. The way the handle is fixed on is also quite particular, and the shape of the foot is also quite particular. It should have the volume stamped on it. This one says a pint on it, just there. And you might even have a maker's mark underneath, and possibly a Royal Navy vocabulary number to it. On round measures, these are more obvious as to what they are in the shape, but still you need to check. And again, they will probably have the volume on. They may or may not have a broad arrow, and they may or may not have a stamp at the top here. Quite often this stamp will give the initials of a monarch and also other information which will allow you to tell where it was made, and possibly a letter which would be a date reference. This one, Birmingham, and made in 1910. Now these measures were made over quite a long period of time, up to the 1950s, 60s, 70s. And they didn't change much, so they're difficult to date accurately. You can get a bit of a foothold on the dating from some of these marks that we've discussed. So when did it all stop? Well, on the 31st of July 1970, what's known as Blacktop Day happened. And that was when the Royal Navy decided that perhaps giving spirits to sailors in charge of very expensive and sophisticated equipment perhaps wasn't such a good idea. So Blacktop Day came in, and of course all of this equipment then became irrelevant for use, and a lot of it came onto the market. So there we go, a few different items of equipment used in issuing grog to sailors in the Royal Navy.